Hey, everybody, and welcome to Cancer in the Room. Now, the goal of our podcast is to talk to people involved in sports, people who've battled cancer, people who continue to battle cancer, and we're going to let them share their stories, their stumbles, and their successes. Now, not everybody wins this battle. Many fight a long and hard battle, but along the way, maybe some of the advice that they can pass along will be able to help other people. Now, it's a full team effort here, Dave.
In 2021, just over 229,000 people were diagnosed with cancer in our country. Sadly, 84,000 did not make it. But the message is simple. Through the dedication of so many, we're making a difference. We can never stop telling the stories. We cannot stop inspiring so many to continue to forge ahead. And we need people to know what we do today will help others tomorrow.
So we're going to try to inspire, to inform, and entertain, and most importantly, tell people that you're not alone in your battle. We can all make a difference in the battle against cancer. So here we stand, a couple of sports broadcasters, both, well, we're sitting. We're not standing, but you know what I mean. We're both fighting cancer, talking sports with sports people. I can't think of anything better than that. My name is BRYN Griffiths.
And I'm Dave Jamieson.
Okay, so our guest, our very first guest on Cancer in the Room, on this first edition, spent a lifetime in baseball, almost 2 decades as a player, and then later as a manager in the major leagues. And then he moved into the broadcast booth and is widely considered to be one of the game's best announcers as the voice of the Toronto BlueJays. He's written books.
Yes, he's a published author,
yes,
by golly.
Is.
Yes, his most recent book is called How to Make the Great Game of Baseball Even Better. Please welcome Buck Martinez. Buck, let's begin today, and thank you for doing this, with what kind of cancer do you have or did you have? And then we'll work from there and just kind of, share your journey and the step-by-step process through this.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to have a forum to talk about this. It's something that nobody wants to talk about until you have to deal with it. And then once you deal with it, you're very anxious to talk about it because you know that it might help other people. I had cancer in my head and neck area. I had cancer on my tongue and in my lymph nodes. And I had no symptoms whatsoever. I had no indication that I was dealing with cancer at all. And my family doctor suggested, and I did this every year. I do it every year. I take a physical before I leave to go to Toronto and start the baseball season to make sure everything is okay. And last year in March, my doctor suggested we take a test. And he said, this test is supposed to detect 30 cancers at the very early stages. Insurance doesn't pay for it. It costs you $900, and I think we should try it. I said, all right, let's do it. So it was getting near the time I was going to leave Florida and go with the ball club to Toronto for opening day. And his office called me up and says, we got your results. I said, okay, good. Just tell me what it is, and I'll be on my way. No, the doctor needs to talk to you.
Oh, boy.
Those are almost as bad a words as you've got cancer. when you hear the doctor needs to talk to you. But I went in and saw my family doctor. He was actually the team doctor when I managed in 2001, and now he's got his own private practice. So we did the test, and out of 25 previous tests, I was the first one that had a positive result. And the first words out of his mouth, there's only one doctor to see in the country, and that is Stephen Frank at MD Anderson in Houston.
What was your reaction when you found out and got the news that you had cancer? And can you go back to that day?
No, absolutely. You have a recollection of it. And, obviously the reaction to the phone call from the office was the first one, because I knew something wasn't right. The second one was, yes, you have something in there, and we've got to find out what it is. And we're going to schedule a biopsy and schedule a CAT scan, and we're going to do all of that, hopefully before you leave. Well, I couldn't get that done before I left. I had a CAT scan, and I had that done, and there was something there. They identified it for sure. And then I had a biopsy done in Toronto, and that confirmed what we all suspected. And then I started researching where I was going to have my treatment. But I remember it vividly, and it's something that, you just deal with. At my age, I've had a wonderful life, and I've done a lot of great things. And this was just another bump in the road. And I said, well, we're going to roll up our sleeves, and we're going to get after this just like everybody else.
Okay, this is a great place to jump in on the next question. There's the shock wave of hearing that you have cancer. It's one thing for you to deal with it, but how were the members of your family, the support group, how did they handle things?
It didn't last long because I had to get to the next step. And
Right.
the next step was obviously sharing it with my wife, sharing it with my son, and then start thinking about doctors. But because my doctor had mentioned Houston and MD Anderson, that was the first place I thought of. And then there's a great hospital here in Florida, Moffitt in Tampa, and and then there was options in Canada as well. So we were thinking about how it was going to be. And then I found out that the treatment was going to be 35, 40 minutes a day. And then I would be able to go home. It wasn't inpatient treatment at all. It was radiation, and I'd go back home. So I was thinking, well, if I'm going to do that and it's going to take 7, 8 weeks, I might as well do it at home. And I made that decision and canceled my appointment in Houston. Well, on opening day, I'm on the field at Rogers Center, and I get a phone call on my cell, and I'm thinking it's my TV producer talking about details of the game. It's the doctor from Houston who said, "Don't make any decisions until you talk to me." Okay. So that made me fly to Houston.
Well, the other one too, and you brought it up, there's the support unit that we have, the family thing, and they take the news very hard, obviously. Were you able to motivate them with your positivity to get you through this battle, or were they feeding you more than you were feeding them in terms of positivity, that kind of thing?
My wife, Arlene, was the one that said, "We got this." And my son, Casey, came and spent some time with us in Houston as well. My good friend, Garth Orge, and his wife came to Houston and spent some time with us as well. But yeah, it's something you just make up your mind. And there's a great connection. Don McDougall, who was president of Labatt Breweries in the 70s and who was responsible for basically bringing the BlueJays to Toronto, he was going through the same thing at the time that I got my notification. So Paul Beeston called me up and he said, "You got to talk to McDougall. He's going through the same thing in New York right now." So I called Don McDougall while driving home from Toronto to Florida, and we spoke for an hour, and he talked about what he was receiving. He was getting pencil beam proton therapy. And he said, that's the only way to go with your head and neck cancer. He said, it's less invasive. It's going to be directed directly at your cancer tumors, and you have to investigate that. And that's what I ended up receiving at Houston.
Buck, as a former professional athlete, a manager in baseball, and someone who's lived their life at the highest competitive level of your sport, did you draw on some of the things as a player that you may have used then for motivation, resilience, and carry those through to what you went through with cancer?
Yeah, I probably did. I didn't really relate it to baseball, but at the same time, I've always had to fight for my position in baseball because somebody was always going to take my job. So I just kept working hard at it and just let things happen. I don't think, I never went into spring training camp thinking I had a job made. I always had to work hard at it. And the same was true with my broadcasting. I started out not really liking it and started out kind of fighting it because I was no longer a player. But, you just do certain things and you go about it in a certain way, and you don't need to tell anybody how tough you are or what you're doing. You just do it. And that's kind of what Don McDougall told me. He said, just think of this as another job, something you have to do, and there's no getting around it. You just have to listen to what they say.
I'm always fascinated to ask people about the responses that you got, the calls you got from people, maybe people that you didn't expect that you would even hear from, that type of thing. We've certainly discussed this numerous times about that. Did you have anybody call you right out of the blue and it shocked you?
I had so many of those calls, it's hard to fathom. And I had a notebook and I put down all of the names of the people that called me, and I tried to reach out to them and, answer just about every message that I received, whether it was a text message or a letter or a note or a phone call. And probably the biggest surprise phone call I got was Hawk Harrelson called me. And he said, whatever you need, I have a house in Orlando. If you need to stay in that area, you can have my house as long as you need it. I mean, things like that, just one right after another. And the Canadian fans were so great across Canada. And I heard from so many, like you two, I know you both have dealt with cancer or they're dealing with cancer, that once you have it, you hear from so many people, and I was amazed at how many people have been touched by cancer, whether it's in their family or themselves personally or a close friend. But it's sad that there are so many people that have dealt with it, and until you have it, you don't really realize the magnitude of the disease.
Buck, given your profile and your public notoriety, do you feel a responsibility to share your story and go into the details and deliver a message to people who might be going through something similar?
Yes, I certainly feel that way. And certainly the people that reached out to me, I have addressed that. But I think in general, I think most people that hear me speak of it understand that that's the biggest thing you can do is accept it, take a positive attitude, look it in the face, and just give it the best effort you can. And, there are certain things that we can't control, that's for sure. There's somebody up there in heaven that has great experience and knows exactly what's going on, but we can't control a lot of things. So we say this all the time in sports: control the controllables. Do what you can to control those things, and everything else will take care of itself. And you can't really worry about something you have no control over. Just take care of what you can. And that's what I always thought about.
Buck, I got to pass this one along because this one sticks out in my memory. And this is watching you go back to work after your battle and watching the fan reaction outside of the stadium in Toronto as you were walking in or out of the building. I don't know which one it was. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, actually. But I can't imagine what it was like for you to go through that.
It was after the game, no question about it. And they caught me off guard in the second or third inning. They didn't go to commercial, and they announced my return over the public address system at Rogers Center. And then the players came out of the field, and that was probably the most emotional time of my life, to see that kind of reaction from the players and the fans. And my son and his family was there at Rogers Center. My granddaughters were there. And then after the game, we walked out of the gate, and I was just walking back to my hotel, and my son and his family was with me, and they started to applaud. Somebody just started clapping, and then the whole place was clapping. And it was just like not a whole lot was said. They were just clapping, and it was so cool and such a great moment. And I'll never forget it. And, when I do at some point down the road finish my career, I don't need a going away party. I've already had that party when I got back to Rogers Center last year.
Buck, we're going to see some changes to baseball this year, the way it's played, the way it's officiated. And some of these changes have been kind of marinating, if you will, in the minor leagues for a bit. And a while ago, you wrote a book looking ahead to baseball's future and some of the ideas you thought would be great to incorporate into the game. What kind of baseball are we going to see this year?
Well, it's interesting because, my first year in professional baseball was 1967. So there were so many things that were different. In 1968, the mound was 15 inches high. 1969, they dropped the mound 5 inches. So that's a dramatic adjustment. I mean, that is a legitimate adjustment that took time for people to get used to. In 1969, there were 4 expansion teams that came in. So the league average went from something like 230 to 248. The whole league hit like 230 that year. Of course, 68 was the Bob Gibson year when he had a 1.12 earned run average, and the pitchers were dominating. So they made a dramatic change. I don't think these changes they've made this year are that dramatic. I think we got the best players in the world, and they will make adjustments. And when I hear players talk about, they tried to change the game, I think the way players have played the game today led to these dramatic rule changes. If they would have played the game the way we played it in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there wouldn't have been any slow games. There wouldn't have been any delays. Nobody would have been worried about their brand, and everybody used to hit the ball from foul line to foul line. There wouldn't have been any shifts. They never shifted against George Brett, Don Mattingly, or Wade Boggs. But I don't think the players made adjustments to the shifts, and it created a need to legislate banning of the shifts. So I think the players are responsible as much as anybody for the changes.
It's weird when you talk to broadcasters, especially guys who have played the sport for a while. I'll call them veterans. How tough is it for you in the broadcast booth to not want to always go back and say, well, when I played, it was like this or it was like that? You do a great job on focusing on the game the way it is now, and you have to be congratulated on that.
No, it's not tough because you have to remember who your audience is, and they're the current fans, and this is their game now. It's not my game. I can't go back and say, man, you should have seen Willie Mays. He was so much better than Mike Trout. It's ridiculous. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear why Mike Trout is good. They want to hear why Austin Matthews is good. They don't want to hear comparisons to Bobby Orr and Austin Matthews. They want to see, you tell me what's great about this game today. And in fact, we are selling this game today. That's what we're doing. Yeah, if we're having a beer someday after a game and I want to talk about my era against this era, you'll hear some different stories. But as a broadcaster, my job is to bring the game to the audience, and this is the game in 2023.
Is that tough? How tough is it to stay updated? Because you got to do a ton of game prep, that kind of thing. Yeah, a lot of game prep.
The World Baseball Classic, I got it all right here. And you know what? It's like ongoing. You never stop. And it's 24 hours a day, 27, 7 days a week. And it's just something you do all the time. You got to keep up with it. There's so many changes. Years ago, before free agency, players played with the same team year in and year out. Weren't many changes. You knew who played there. You knew Mickey Mantle was number 7, and he was going to play center field for the Yankees, and there weren't many changes. Now we've got Brandon Belt, Kevin Kiermaier, Chris Bassett, Eric Swanson, just to name a few guys that are new. They're going to be important, and Dalton Varsho. So you have to keep up with everything. And I do that by reaching out to my fellow broadcasters, former teammates, former managers or current managers that I know, and just talk to them about, give me your thoughts about this player. So it's ongoing. It's always working.
Buck, if you're not calling a game, what player will make you stop what you're doing, sit down, and watch them?
Vladdy. Vladdy is one guy, and of course Aaron Judge. Mike Trout still got that. Trey Turner. If you think about Trey Turner, Trey Turner could have played in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, or today. He's got all the skills. I love to watch Verlander. I love to watch Scherzer. Those guys that have been able to stop time and continue to excel. And and for me, I think that just proves that you can't create a ball player and you can't dictate how a player is going to play. You have to look at each individual and let them dictate how much they play and how long they play in their career. And Verlander and Scherzer are 2 great examples of that.
Now, when you were playing and maybe you were thinking about wrapping things up, how far away was broadcasting from your mind? Dave and I were talking about the fact that some of the best color commentators, for some reason, are catchers. And we were trying to figure out exactly why. Is it a different perspective on the game? Like, why is that?
Catchers are involved in every aspect of the game. In spring training, they're there catching pitchers every day. They're involved in the bunt defense. They're involved in base stealing defense. They're involved in outfield throws. They're involved in everything. So when a pitching coach goes and talks to the pitcher, the catcher's standing right there. So he knows everything that's going on the field. And Dusty Baker told me this many years ago. Dusty said, I wish I would have caught, because you see the whole game in front of you. You're the only position on the field that sees the whole game. Everybody else has a partial view of the game. Catchers have a full view of the game from foul line to foul line. And I think that's why so many people have been involved in broadcasting are former catchers.
And would some of that, Buck, apply to managers? You've got, as a catcher, a 360-degree view of everything that's going on the field, and you know the responsibilities of everybody on the field at that time. A lot of catchers have gone on to be really good managers.
I think so. And I think that's why you've seen a limited amount of pitchers as managers. They just have a one-dimensional view of the game. And Bob Lemon was an exception, of course, and Roger Craig was a successful manager, but there haven't been a lot of pitchers. And Tommy Lasorda was a pitcher, but he never had a long major league career, but he had a phenomenal career as a manager. But yeah, pitchers, they just have a different view of the game, and their game is all one-on-one with the batter. And you don't see the defense. And the great pitchers do. And I always say that for me, to be a great pitcher, you got to be a baseball player, and you got to understand the game. And I think we've seen that over the years with Smoltz and Maddox and Clemens and Verlander and those guys. They were great baseball players.
Okay, let's talk about career highlights. Maybe as a player, broadcaster, they've got to be 2 or 3 or even 4 things that stand out there.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. And everybody that I talk to, all the fans always talk about me breaking my leg. So that kind of sums up my playing career. But as a broadcaster, I guess there's a couple of things. the Cal Ripken game, I worked the Cal Ripken game when he broke Lou Gehrig's record, 21-31. I worked that for ESPN with Chris Berman, and we won an Emmy Award for that. And it was a tremendous night. And we actually didn't speak for 22 minutes while Ripken made his way around the field. And for Chris Berman, of course, that's an eternity.
Wow. Yeah.
But now, and another one that's a highlight that really kind of happened accidentally was Jose Bautista's 50th home run. And it was in the first inning against King Felix at Rogers Center. And he swings, and there's a drive, get up. And all of a sudden I realized this is 50. And it just kind of came out like that. And, I didn't think about it. I didn't prepare anything. And I think most broadcasters will tell you they don't think about what they're going to say when that moment happens. But that's one that I think it caught me off guard, but I think I was fortunate enough to capture the moment before the ball went over the fence, and it ended up a 1-0 game.
Buck, where do you come out in the argument or a discussion, if you will, around old school, the code, and the new school of baseball? Home run celebrations is where I'm going with that.
Yeah, I think we are seeing a trend back to a little bit more in the middle. And I think with Bruce Bochy coming back, Dusty Baker winning the World Series, Bob Melvin managing it in San Diego, Buck Showalter managing in the Mets, these guys are coming back into the game. And another thing that's evident, too, is the fact that Don Mattingly is the bench coach for the Toronto Blue Jays. And we've got Victor Martinez in camp with the Blue Jays, and Edwin Encarnacion's coming back in camp. So they understand the value of experience. And I think for a few years, experience was discounted. And you can't replace experience. You can't replace Victor Martinez talking about hitting to Vladdy and Bo and all the other young hitters. Edwin Encarnacion, he's done it. And these players are right at the brink of the analytical introduction to baseball. So they have seen the analytics creep in, and they still have the feel of what it takes to be successful in the game as a player. It's a personal game. And there's so much emotion that it gets into the game. You can't look at a printout and say, okay, we're going to make this guy a player. It doesn't work like that. If it worked like that, everybody would play, because we're saying, you go to school for 5 years and you're going to be a baseball player because we're going to teach you how to play. Doesn't work.
I laughed the other day because, and this was during spring training, I saw Don Mattingly walking into the Blue Jays spring training camp, and I thought to myself, this just feels kind of weird. It's kind of like an alumni member of the Calgary Flames going into an Edmonton Oilers locker room. There's something not quite right here, right? But baseball's baseball, I guess.
He is something else, boy. He has been so active in camp, and he has gotten freedom from John Snyder to do whatever he wants to do. And you'll see him with the first baseman, and he's got Vladdy doing all kinds of subtleties at first base. He'll talk hitting, he'll talk base running, he'll talk everything. And John Snyder has so much confidence and so much confidence in his ability that he is going to utilize Don Mattingly exactly as he should. Lean on him for experience. And he said, you know what? We're going to have a great relationship here. And Snyder grew up in New Jersey, a Yankee fan. And, of course, Don Mattingly was his favorite player. So that helps, too.
When we talked a few weeks ago, I was excited when you told me you were going to be coming back this season.
I came back last year, and I came back in July last year, and the network, Rogers Sportsnet, was tremendous with me because they determined, even before I even thought about it, that I shouldn't travel right out of the chute. So I only did home games at Rogers Center, which allowed me to get ample rest and build my strength back up. And, you have something done in your throat, and your voice isn't quite as strong as you would like it to be. And it took a while, and I didn't really realize how much strength I had been robbed of, just physically, just the emotions. And I couldn't lose any weight when I was going through treatment, because if you lose weight, that affects the treatment and how it's delivered. So I had to eat, and I just kept eating and maintained my weight. But once I got done with that, I've lost the sense of taste, and my saliva is diminished, and so I don't eat so much. So I've lost about 37 pounds, but I feel great. And it's not because I'm ill or not healthy. It's just because I'm not eating as much. But that'll come back too. But as far as coming back, it's something I've done forever. I have been a broadcaster much longer than I have been a player. And you know what? I'm around the greatest players in the world on a daily basis, and I get to do something I love. And quite honestly, I consider that I've never had a real job. I'm just very fortunate to work at something I love.
Buck, do you have some advice that you would give to somebody who might be going through the same battle as we've all done?
Yeah, I think your attitude has a lot to do with how well you handle the treatment. If you look at it as like I'm doomed and this is not going to work, or if you take the approach that I am dealing with the best doctors that I can get to, I am confident in their ability. They know a lot more about it than I do, and I'm going to listen to their advice, and I'm going to do exactly what they say. And as I said, my wife, Arlene, was right there for me every single day, just keeping me upbeat, not letting me get down. You know, they gave you a bunch of pain relievers and all that stuff. I never took a pain pill. I never did any of that stuff. I just didn't want to give into that. And we got through it. And you know what? It's not pleasant. It's a lot of work, and but it makes you better. And when you get better, you really feel like you've accomplished something.
Well, thanks for your time today. We really appreciate it. So proud of the way you've handled your fight with cancer. It is great, just great to see that big smile on your face. And we both think you're looking great. And hey, by the way, what's the weather like in Florida today?
Well, it kind of got a little warmer today. It was up to 83, 84, so it's pretty nice, fellas. You can see by my face that I've been out in the sun a little bit.
All right, well, thanks for that weather update. Thanks very much for your time today, Buck. This has been fantastic.
My pleasure. Great to be with you guys. You're doing a heck of a job, and it's a wonderful topic to talk about. No question about it.
Good health, Buck. Take care.
Thank you.